Greetings. Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's update on the City of Jacksonville's response to COVID-19. On the call today with me is my Chief of Staff, Jordan Ellsbury, Under Sheriff Pat Ivey from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, Fire Chief Keith Powers from the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue, and Emergency Operations Center Director Steve Woodard. As of this morning, the Florida Department of Health reports 229 new positive COVID-19 cases in Duval County, 105 deaths, and an overall positive testing percentage of 10.49%. I was on a call with hospital leaders this morning, and what they shared with me leaves me cautiously optimistic. I reiterate, cautiously optimistic. The recent surge seems to be stabilizing and even trending downward in some facilities. While this is a positive sign, we should remain vigilant, cautious, and take the responsible actions to slow the spread of this disease. Our hospitals are reporting slightly improving numbers with a total of 531 current hospitalizations of COVID patients and 118 in intensive care units. All hospitals are reporting available adult beds and ICU capacity availability. We are continuing to increase our testing capabilities to help us better identify, isolate, and slow the spread of COVID-19 in our community. Yesterday, 3 new city-sponsored sites began operations at Ocean Way Senior Center on the north side, Lane Wiley Senior Center on the west side, and Leroy D. Clemens Senior Center in northwest Jacksonville. These testing sites will be open Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the next 6 months. Testing is free and open to all Duval County residents, regardless of symptoms. You do not need an appointment, but wait times will be reduced if you have one. Go to lhi.care/COVID testing to register. That's lhi.care/COVID testing to register. This now makes a total of 6 City of Jacksonville contracted testing sites in operation for the next 6 months. Combined, these sites can test over 800 citizens per day. For more information on these new COVID testing sites or any other testings throughout Jacksonville, visit our testing information webpage at coj.net/COVID-19 testing. coj.net/COVID-19 testing. Yesterday, Sheriff Williams shared his concerns regarding the safety and security of the RNC convention. Since taking office, and before I was elected, I made it clear that public safety is my top priority and should be the top priority of any government at any level. My administration and I have been in constant communication with the sheriff and his team and state and local law enforcement planning for the safety and security of our city. And we will continue these meetings over the next few days to address the sheriff's concerns. Nothing Sheriff Williams said yesterday was a surprise to me or anyone on my team. It's something we've been working through together. We will collaborate with all partners, health experts, law enforcement, and more to ensure that any event maintains a healthy and safe environment for citizens and guests. Before we close, I want to remind everyone that personal responsibility and prevention measures remain our best tool in the fight against the coronavirus. I'm continuing to ask every Jacksonville citizen to commit to this fight and to join us in the fight to stop the spread of COVID-19. Please wear a mask or cloth covering when you're in close contact with others. Maintain a safe social distance of 6 feet or more from others when you can. Wash your hands frequently and avoid large gatherings. These are simple but effective steps we can all take to contribute to the fight against the pandemic. If you have any symptoms or have had direct contact with someone who is positive, please stay home. Self-isolate and get tested to prevent spreading this virus to vulnerable populations. It's important we all take these steps. This pandemic is unlike any we've seen in our lifetimes. And these times are calling on us to all come together as one community and one people to overcome this challenge. We're all in this together, and together we will succeed. Again, thank you for joining me and for getting this important information out to Jacksonville citizens. With that, we'll take questions. In the interest of time, we'll call on 1 reporter from each news outlet. Please limit to 2 questions per person asking the question. We'll start with AG with Florida Politics.
Hey, good morning, Mayor. Quick question. We're seeing throughout the country federal troops in the streets quelling protesters. Is that a scenario that's going to happen here in Jacksonville? Can you commit to the people of Jacksonville that federal shock troops will not be in the streets during this convention, potentially putting them in unmarked vehicles the way it's happening in Portland and other places? Thank you.
Yeah, well, AG, first let me say, I'll have our undersheriff address specificity with that in a moment. But we have had no conversations about the need for that type of a presence in our city. And I would argue that if you go back to when the protests started, the peaceful protests started in June, and then that first evening or second evening, I can think it was a Saturday, a small group of folks in the protest started to turn to violence and vandalism. And our local law enforcement, our sheriff and his team made it very clear that that wasn't going to be tolerated. So we as a city are not facing the things some other cities are facing that have just let violence run rampant. No discussions about that type of presence in Jacksonville. To my knowledge, can let the undersheriff add to that, please.
So thank you, Mayor. That's exactly correct, AG. There would have to be a need, and there's been no discussion. There is no need here. With that being said, 2 points. Violence during protests is not a lawful or peaceful protest, so that won't be tolerated. And number 2, the consent, it's discussed several times about unmarked vehicles. Unmarked vehicles doesn't change anything. So the presence of unmarked vehicles, we have unmarked vehicles in our fleet. They are only utilized when needed, but there is no talks whatsoever of anything like that occurring here in Duval.
Guy with WJCT.
Hey, Mayor. 2 questions for you. With the RNC being scaled back like we saw last week, I wanted to ask, do you still stand by that figure that you brought up last month of around $100 million in economic impact? That was something that Dean Black brought up as well. Second question for you, with the scale back and the major concerns we did hear from Sheriff Williams yesterday, do you still believe that the economic positives can outweigh the potential negatives that we're seeing, whether it be health or other things surrounding this event?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for your question. I have not seen an updated financial model. Those original assumptions were based on a convention as we've known it over the years, others that have been hosted. So I think it's clear that there wouldn't be that kind of economic activity with a scaled back. However, it's also clear that businesses would experience success because of this. Hotel rooms would fill up, so there would be positive economic impact on the local economy and on local businesses. And the top priority as we work towards that date is to work with our sheriff and his team and their law enforcement partners. As I said in my remarks, Sheriff and I have always been in constant communications about all things public safety. Nothing he said yesterday was a surprise. He shared with the team before yesterday that he was getting close to a point. If he didn't have what he needed, he was going to have to communicate that. And that's what he did yesterday. And so with that communication now, everybody's working together to get him what he needs, make sure that the event is configured in a way that he can come to the judgment and decision that this can be pulled off in a safe way. Anna Lee with WOKV.
Hi, Mayor. So you said the sheriff's concerns weren't a surprise to you. Have you expressed those concerns to federal agents? And what specifically are you doing to address those concerns? And have you contacted any other, or have you been contacted by any other police departments or sheriff's offices that have offered their help? And also, are there any other concerns that anyone else in these RNC meetings have that haven't been discussed yet, as the RNC is less than 33 days away?
Everybody involved in this is aware of the sheriff's concerns and have been and are actively working to resolve them. I don't know if the undersheriff wants to add to that. I mean, they're in meetings and discussions with federal and other agencies around the state as well.
So Mayor, thank you. So as the sheriff said yesterday, we got about a 25% commitment of what we believe we would need to pull this off safely. I know that it was reported yesterday that a couple police departments in our region were reached out to and asked could they contribute. We had already been in contact with those particular agencies, and their allotment of which they were willing to let us utilize was already included in our 25%. So we have meetings, we have daily meetings here, which we have for over a month since we were notified that the RNC would possibly be coming here. Nothing but good things and great relationships with our federal, state, and other local jurisdictions, relationships, law enforcement. The challenge is the timeline, a timeline in which if you historically go back, you merely need to go back 4 or 5 years ago and look even 8 years ago or 12 years ago, and you can look at the plans, whether it be a DNC or an RNC, of what it takes and entails to have one of these events safely. Once you do that, you will quickly realize we are not doing anything out of the ordinary. The only thing we are doing out of the ordinary is a timeline in which no one has ever had to deal with.
Paige Kelton, Action News. Paige, I think you need to hit unmute.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Timeline for the securities grant money that the NSSE designation gave us, any money yet from the host committee? And also, Mayor, when you were head of the RPOF back in 2012, the RNC was in Tampa. You're intimate with the complexity of planning a huge event like this, politics aside, off script, on a personal level, Mayor. As someone who cares about the city and its citizens, the sheriff says we're not ready. We're 33 days away. Are you worried that Jacksonville, through no agency's fault, has been set up to fail?
No, if public safety, if our sheriff and law enforcement agencies, with their expertise and judgment, we're gonna have to find a way to get them to a place where this is configured in a way that they can do it in, that they can, with sound judgment and all their experience, say that we can do this in a safe way. And that's what people are working towards right now. The first part of the question, I think, was about the grant money. Jordan Ellsbury, do you have an update on that?
I do, Paige. Hi, thanks for the question. Yeah, we're currently in daily conversations with the DOJ about that funding. We're expecting some sort of notification of an award or an awarded budget any day now. We finalized the number of somewhere between 33 and 35 million related to the securities grant. So it's just a matter of days at this point.
Paige with WBTV.
Hi there. Thanks for taking questions today. First question, is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department committed to y'all officially to helping Jacksonville law enforcement with the RNC in some capacity? And second question, why isn't Sheriff Williams here to answer questions today?
Well, I'll let Under Sheriff Ivey talk about availability of resources that you just asked, but Sheriff Williams, I mean, we do these updates sometimes twice a week, sometimes 4 days a week. It's all based on the need to communicate information during this pandemic. And he's on a majority of these when he's not, the undersheriff's on them. So I don't think that's a relevant question, but Undersheriff, I'll let you answer the other part of the question.
So in reference to Charlotte, yes, we had conversation with them early on when it was talked that the RNC would be potentially coming to Jacksonville. We actually shared plans back and forth with them. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We've also had those discussions with Tampa and spoken with the leaders down there that have been involved in the planning from the safety perspective down there. So we have done our due diligence with all of entities that have actually planned and had one of these before. In reference to Charlotte giving us some resources, there has been that discussion several times. I don't want to comment because that is actually part of the details of the security actual plan. But yes, there is discussions about them assisting us with some resources to help us successfully navigate this RNC.
Ann with First Coast News.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. First question, do you believe the sheriff is wrong in his assessment that the city is not able to pull this off safely at this time? And two, given that this is one of the worst years on record for homicides in this city, do you think that this taking up so much of the sheriff's focus right now is good for the city of Jacksonville?
First part of the question, what the sheriff said yesterday, look, he is the sheriff of the county, head of the city, law enforcement. He's many years in the with the JSO. He knows what he's talking about clearly. So the position that he takes that we're not prepared for this right now, yeah, if that's what, yes, I agree with him. However, he also has communicated that he's continuing to work with the planners to configure this in a way that's safe and to get him to get the resources that he needs. The other part of the question is our law enforcement officers, I know at JSO, whether it relates to homicides or any number of other public safety issues they have to face and deal with on a daily basis, are doing that, and we'll be able to manage through that in the event there's an event here. Jim with WJXT.
Hey, Mayor. You said you weren't surprised by what the sheriff said, but we were surprised, and the general public very surprised by all of this. How do you move forward now knowing that the sheriff is saying, we're not ready for this? How do you let the public know what's going to happen? Because I'll tell you, people are very concerned by this. They're concerned by what's going to happen. If the sheriff can't handle this situation, who can?
Well, everybody's working to get the resources that are needed for our law enforcement and to partner with other agencies around the state and in the country. And provided we get to that, provided we get our sheriff and the team comfortable and comfortable to where they can say that they can do this in a safe way, we communicate that at that time and move forward. And that's what's happening right now. That's what everybody's working on right now. And we will continue to keep the public updated through our discussions with all of you. Andrew with the Times Union.
And Mayor, what changes are necessary? You're talking about additional resources necessary. What specifically needs to happen for you and the sheriff to feel comfortable that people can be kept safe during the RNC? And then on top of that, to echo Ann's question earlier, which is we have more homicides at this point in the city than we've experienced in decades. And I know you're saying you feel confident that law enforcement is capable of handling that. Obviously, there's something going wrong if homicides are as high as they are, and there's a lot of attention already being spent on the event, regardless of whether it's eventually hosted. So are you telling us you don't have any concerns that there is time being spent on the event as opposed to being spent on the rising violent crime?
I'll let Under Sheriff Ivy take that, but let me just say that our law enforcement have to deal with public safety issues on any given day. That's what they're trained to do. And barring a pandemic, there's always events happening, concerts, sporting events, things with the arts, families doing things in parks and getting permits. And at the same time, they're protecting us. Under Sheriff Ivy, I'll let you address that with your expertise.
Sure, Mayor. Andrew, so a couple things. The mayor kind of hinted to it. So you're going to plan for an RNC. We need resources. Again, I'll shoot you back to go back and get the plans from Charlotte of what it would have entailed for bringing in law enforcement from other agencies, other entities at various levels. All along, while you're preparing for that RNC, you are still going to provide the law enforcement service to the community. You have to do that. That has to be in your plan. That you don't drop that and just concentrate on the RNC. So that is one of the challenges, not necessarily the violence, which is always one in the crime, but to successfully know that we have a plan that's solid and we do not allow that to suffer. In regards to the homicide rate, we are well aware of it, obviously. The level of homicides does not change our emphasis on it, meaning every homicide is treated the same. Every homicide is as a response in reference to a full investigation and things of that nature. So we're always going to have the investigative resources in our plan that are going to make sure that we have what we need to cover, which is our bread and butter, our day-to-day, every single day, providing safety and security for this community. The RNC is what the extra thing is. We're not going to let it pull away from us keeping this community safe to the best of our ability.
Thank you. Last question, David with the Miami Herald.
Hi, Mayor, I would ask if the sheriff's opinion on the ability to safely police the convention does not change, if you would be willing to move forward with the event or if you would want to call it off. And then for the sheriff's office, I would ask if you can specify in terms of resources the number of sworn personnel needed to safely police the event and the number of personnel that are currently available to do so.
Any event, anything that we put on in the city of Jacksonville, I have to have my sheriff telling me that it can be done, that he has the resources that he needs, and it can be done in a safe and responsible way. Under Sheriff Ivey, I'll let you close this out.
Yes, sir. So I've heard the analogies of how come you can have a Jaguar game with 70,000 people and there's no issues, but then you're going to have an RNC and your probably max day would not have that much attend one of the events. It's apples and oranges. We have a plan that we developed now over 20 years ago in reference to handling Jaguar games, and it's pretty much plug and play, meaning the only factors other than a few variables to change are who's the opposing team. But your security plan is set. This is a distinctly different animal. What happens in this is the constant evolving of the venues. I think the media knows that the venues change from because of COVID, and rightfully so. Some concerns with social distancing and things, one of the factors that impacts it. So they start to move to more of an outside venue. With that, the plan changes. For the security plan to be solid, you allot for those changes. That personnel number, I don't have the exact number, but it is in the thousands that we ask for, which is right on point with other jurisdictions that have had these exact events. Again, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, that everybody, we're not inventing the wheel here. Everybody knows that that's what it takes to pull these off. So specifically to what we have a commitment for is roughly, the sheriff was right when he said yesterday, about 25% of that. So we are being good stewards with the taxpayers' money. The financial piece of this that impacts that is knowing exactly when you bring in personnel, you've got to have hotel rooms, you've got to have meals to provide for them. So this is a much bigger animal than I think with details that most people want to realize. Not that we're up for the challenge. The reality is there's a timeline, and that is why there has been about an 18-month timeline historically, again, with every entity that's ever had to deal with these. And that's the biggest challenge. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. And let me just close with this. I really think it's important that the message that comes out of this today, in addition to your questions about the event, which I understand, but that we've seen some, again, I said I'm cautiously optimistic about what our hospital leaders are sharing with me at this moment in time. However, we have to remain vigilant. We have to act responsibly. I think if you go back to a period of time at some point in June, when numbers were low, and this was happening, frankly, all over the state and in other parts of the country, I think people started to feel a level of comfort, and social distancing didn't seem to be on people's minds. People weren't wearing masks. This was before they were mandated, and we saw a spike. And it looks like some peaks in terms of what the hospitals are experiencing. Some of those peaks may have been within the first 10 to 12 days of July. And while they're still managing, it appears that our behaviors, our responsible behavior of wearing masks, practice social distancing, testing, all the things that we've talked about now that we've implemented over the last few months are working. So we've got to continue to stay the course. Remember the virus is with us, and wear a mask, practice social distancing when you can, wash your hands, and if you have symptoms, get a test. If you've been around somebody that's tested positive, get a test. If you're concerned, get a test. Thank you.